Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like you're just a walking checkbook with a pulse? Well, let me tell you about the night I became a ghost at my own son's dinner party, and how that moment changed everything. My name is Caroline Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. Before I tell you what happened, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments, because this story spans from my quiet neighborhood in Vermont all the way to a lawyer's office in Boston. And I think you'll understand why geography matters when family forgets where loyalty should live. I was married to Robert for 47 years before cancer took him 3 years ago. We built Mitchell Associates together, a commercial real estate firm that grew from a tiny office above a pizza shop into something worth $23 million. Robert always said we were building a legacy for our son, Daniel. We poured everything into that business: 60-hour weeks, missed anniversaries, delayed vacations, all for family, all for the future. Daniel is our only child. He's 43 now, married to Stephanie for 6 years. They live in a beautiful colonial house about 15 minutes from my cottage, the same cottage Robert and I downsized to after selling our family home, the same cottage where I spent 3 years learning to sleep alone, learning to cook for one, learning that grief doesn't have an expiration date, no matter what people tell you at the grocery store. After Robert died, I threw myself into being the mother I thought Daniel needed. I was there for everything: Sunday dinners at their place, helping Stephanie with her garden, buying groceries when I knew money was tight for them, which was often because Daniel had changed jobs twice in 2 years, and Stephanie's interior design business was still getting off the ground, as she liked to say. I never minded helping. That's what mothers do, right? That's what family does. When you love someone, you show up, you contribute. You make their lives easier because making them happy makes you happy. Or at least, that's what I believed before that Tuesday evening in October. It was 6:15 when I pulled into their driveway. I had 4 bags of groceries in my trunk, the good stuff, not the generic brands. Organic chicken breasts, fresh vegetables, that expensive aged cheddar Daniel loved, a case of the wine Stephanie always raved about. I'd spent over $200, but I didn't care. They were family. My family. The only family I had left in this world. Their driveway was packed with cars I didn't recognize. The living room windows glowed warm and golden, and I could hear laughter floating out into the cold autumn air. A dinner party. They were having a dinner party, and they hadn't mentioned it when I'd called that morning to ask if they needed anything from the store. I sat in my car for a moment, watching shadows move behind the curtains. Should I go in? Should I just leave the groceries? I didn't want to intrude, but these bags were heavy, and the chicken needed to get into the refrigerator. So I did what I always did. I made myself useful. I made myself small. I went around to the back door, the one that led directly into their kitchen, planning to slip in quietly, put everything away, and slip out before anyone even noticed I'd been there. That decision, that simple, practical decision, changed absolutely everything. The back door was unlocked, as it usually was. I could hear music playing inside, Sinatra crooning about flying to the moon, and multiple conversations overlapping in that pleasant buzz that comes with good wine and better company. I turned the handle slowly, carefully, not wanting to startle anyone. The kitchen was empty but messy. Wine glasses on every surface, empty bottles lined up by the sink, cheese and crackers scattered across the island. I stepped inside with 2 bags in each hand, my arms already aching. The kitchen door leading to the dining room was open just a crack, and I could see the flicker of candlelight and hear voices more clearly now. I was about to set the bags down when I heard Stephanie's voice rise above the others, that particular pitch she used when she was performing for an audience. Honestly, Tom, we're practically counting down until Inheritance Day at this point. The words stopped me cold. My hands froze on the grocery bags. Inheritance Day. She said it like it was Christmas, like it was something to celebrate. Stephanie, that was Daniel's voice, but he was laughing. My son was laughing. What? I'm just being honest, Stephanie continued, and I could hear the whine in her voice, that loose, careless quality. Caroline is 72. She's had a good run, and when she goes, Daniel gets everything. The house, the investments, the life insurance. We're looking at over $20 million. Maybe 23. So yes, we're counting down. The dinner guests erupted in laughter. Not uncomfortable laughter, not shocked laughter. The kind of laughter that meant everyone had been thinking the same thing, and Stephanie had just been brave enough, or drunk enough, to say it out loud. "You are terrible," a woman's voice said, but she was giggling. "That is your mother-in-law, who brings us groceries every week because she feels guilty for existing," Stephanie shot back. "I'm not saying I want her to die tomorrow. I'm just saying that when nature takes its course, we're first in line for a very nice payout. And honestly, after putting up with her constant hovering and those judgmental little comments about my housekeeping, we've earned it." More laughter. So much laughter. "Inheritance Day," someone repeated, testing the phrase. "I love it. You should put it on your calendar." "Oh, trust me," Stephanie said. "It's already there. Penciled in for some time in the next decade. Maybe sooner, if we're lucky. She does love her butter and salt." My heart was a stone in my chest. My lungs had forgotten how to work. I stood there in their kitchen, holding bags of groceries I'd bought with money my husband and I had earned through decades of work, listening to my daughter-in-law joke about my death, while my son, my only child, my only family, laughed along. The bag in my right hand started to slip. I caught it before it fell, but the movement sent a jar of tomato sauce rolling across the floor. It thunked against the cabinet with a sound that seemed impossibly loud. The laughter in the dining room stopped. "What was that?" someone asked. "I should have left. I should have walked out that door and never looked back. But my feet wouldn't move. I stood there like a statue, like a ghost haunting my own son's kitchen, waiting to see if anyone would come check. Waiting to see if Daniel would find me there, if he'd see my face and know that I'd heard everything. "Probably just the cat," Stephanie said dismissively. "Daniel, refill everyone's wine. I'll check in a second." The conversation resumed, shifting to someone's upcoming vacation to Cancun. I heard Daniel say something about wishing they could afford a trip like that, and Stephanie's response was too quiet for me to catch, but it made everyone laugh again. That knowing, waiting for the payout kind of laugh. My body finally remembered how to move. I set the grocery bags down on the kitchen floor as quietly as possible, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. I didn't put anything away. I didn't leave a note. I just backed toward the door, my eyes fixed on that crack of light from the dining room, terrified that someone would come through and find me there with tears streaming down my face. The cold October air hit me like a slap when I got outside. I walked quickly to my car, not running but close to it, and I didn't let myself break down until I was safely inside with the doors locked. Then it came. Great, heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing something loose in my chest. I cried so hard I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, could only sit there in their driveway while they laughed and drank wine bought with allowance money I'd given Daniel last month to help with expenses. Inheritance Day. They were counting down to my death. They were joking about it, celebrating it even. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was knowing that I'd enabled this. Every check I'd written, every grocery run, every time I'd swallowed my pride and made myself useful because I was terrified of being alone, terrified of being the burden they clearly already saw me as. I'd taught them that I was worth more dead than alive. I drove home on autopilot, not remembering the turns or the stoplights. My cottage was dark and cold when I walked in. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat on the couch in my living room, the same couch where Robert and I used to watch old movies on Friday nights, and I let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the humiliation, the crushing loneliness of knowing that the two people I'd built my entire world around saw me as nothing more than an obstacle between them and money. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Hey Mom, did you stop by earlier? Stephanie found some grocery bags in the kitchen. Thanks for those. You didn't have to." I stared at that message for 20 minutes. You didn't have to. No apology for not inviting me to the party. No acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, leaving groceries on the floor was strange behavior from a mother who usually organized their entire pantry. Just casual acceptance of my generosity, as expected and unremarkable as sunrise. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching. If I'd learned anything from building a business with Robert, it was this. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when someone bets against you, make damn sure they lose. By 3 a.m, I had 15 browser tabs open and 3 pages of notes. By dawn, I had a plan. By the following Tuesday, I had an appointment with Harrison Caldwell, the estate attorney who'd helped Robert and me set up our original will and trust structure. Harrison's office was in a converted brownstone in downtown Boston, the kind of place where the carpet was thick enough to swallow sound, and the artwork on the walls cost more than most people's cars. I'd been there twice before. Once when Robert and I first set up our estate plan, and again right after he died to make sure everything transferred smoothly to me. Harrison was in his 60s, sharp as a tack, with silver hair and glasses that made him look like a particularly intelligent owl. "Caroline," he said warmly, standing to shake my hand when his secretary showed me in. "It's good to see you, though I admit I'm curious about the urgency. Your email said you wanted to completely restructure your estate plan." "I do," I said, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. My purse sat in my lap like armor. I need to change everything. The will, the trusts, all of it. And I need to do it in a way that's completely legal, completely airtight, and completely irreversible. Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained professionally neutral. "All right. Can you tell me what's prompting this change? Has there been a shift in your relationship with Daniel?" I almost laughed. A shift. Such a polite way to phrase it. You could say that. I recently discovered that my son and his wife are eagerly anticipating my death so they can inherit my estate. They were joking about it at a dinner party. They called it Inheritance Day. The neutrality slipped from Harrison's face, replaced by something harder. "I see. I'm very sorry to hear that, Caroline. That must have been incredibly painful." "It was clarifying," I said firmly. I'd spent the past week crying. I was done crying. Now it was time for action. Robert and I built everything we had from nothing. We worked ourselves to the bone for 47 years, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let it fund tropical vacations and new cars for 2 people who are sitting around hoping I'll die soon. Harrison leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "What exactly did you have in mind?" I pulled out my notes, 3 pages of research and calculations that I'd refined every night for the past week. "I want to set up a charitable remainder trust. I've been reading about them. My understanding is that I can place all my assets into the trust, receive income from it while I'm alive, designate a small monthly payment to Daniel after I die, and direct the bulk of everything to charitable organizations. Is that correct?" "In essence, yes," Harrison said carefully. "A charitable remainder trust would allow you to restructure your estate so that your son receives a fixed income stream, while the remainder goes to charities of your choosing after the trust term ends or after his death, depending on how we structure it. But Caroline, these are complex instruments. Once established, they're very difficult to undo. You'd be, essentially, disinheriting your son." "I'm not disinheriting him," I corrected. "I'm teaching him a lesson about gratitude. He'll get $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. Over 40 years. The term I want for the trust, that's $48,000. That's more than generous, considering he was hoping I'd die." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "Where do you want the remainder to go?" "Animal shelters," I said without hesitation. Harrison blinked. "Animal shelters?" "Animal shelters," I confirmed. "Specifically, no-kill shelters and animal rescue organizations throughout New England. Robert and I always wanted a dog, but we were too busy building the business. After he died, I thought about getting one for company, but I couldn't handle the idea of another loss. So yes, animal shelters. They do honest work. They care for creatures who can't care for themselves. They don't sit around dinner parties joking about Inheritance Day. A smile tugged at Harrison's lips. That's actually quite poetic, and it's absolutely doable. We'll need to be very specific about the terms. You want Daniel to receive $100 per month for 40 years after your death? Yes, and I want it structured so he can't contest it, can't break the trust, can't claim diminished capacity or undue influence or any other legal loophole. Can we do that? Harrison pulled out a legal pad and started writing. We can make it very strong. First, we'll have you evaluated by a physician to document your mental competency. That creates a record that you're of sound mind. Second, we'll video record you explaining your reasoning for the trust structure. Third, we'll include a no contest clause stating that if Daniel challenges the trust, he forfeits even the monthly payment. Fourth, we'll use my firm as the trustee, which removes any potential conflict of interest. And fifth, we'll draft this over several weeks with multiple consultations, creating a paper trail that shows this wasn't an impulsive decision. I felt something loosen in my chest for the first time since that terrible Tuesday night. How long will all this take? If we move efficiently, 6 to 8 weeks. We'll need to establish the charitable beneficiaries, determine the exact assets going into the trust, arrange for the competency evaluation, and draft all the documentation. It's not a simple process, Caroline, and I need to make absolutely sure this is what you want. Once we execute this, you won't be able to change your mind. I won't change my mind, I said firmly, but I do have one request. I don't want Daniel to know about any of this until after I'm gone. Can we keep it confidential? Attorney-client privilege protects our communications, Harrison assured me. As long as you don't tell him, he won't know. The trust will be a private document until your death, at which point it becomes operative, and he'll be notified by the trustee. I nodded slowly, imagining that moment. Imagining Daniel and Stephanie sitting in this very office, or one like it, expecting to hear about their multi-million-dollar inheritance. Imagining their faces when they learned about the $100 per month. The image shouldn't have brought me satisfaction, but it did. Maybe that made me petty. Maybe that made me vindictive. I didn't care anymore. When can we start? I asked. Today, Harrison said. I'll have my secretary schedule your competency evaluation for next week. In the meantime, I need you to compile a complete list of your assets. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, real estate, everything. Can you do that? I can do that, I said, standing. My legs felt stronger than they had in days. Thank you, Harrison, for taking me seriously, for not trying to talk me out of it. He stood as well, extending his hand. Caroline, in 30 years of practicing estate law, I've learned that family isn't always what we think it is. You're doing what's right for you. That's what matters. The next 6 weeks were strange. I went through the motions of my normal life. Grocery shopping, book club meetings, the occasional lunch with friends from church, and everything felt different, like I was watching myself from a distance. I kept waiting for Daniel to notice that something had changed, but he never did. Why would he? I was the same reliable, useful mother I'd always been, or at least, I appeared to be. I saw them twice during that period, once at a Sunday brunch that Daniel had actually invited me to, probably because Stephanie wanted to show off her new dining room curtains. I sat at their table, eating French toast I could barely taste, listening to Stephanie complain about how expensive everything was while wearing a bracelet I'd never seen before. When Daniel walked me to my car afterward, he hugged me and said, "Thanks for coming, Mom. You know we love having you around." I almost told him then. Almost said, "Do you? Do you really? Because 6 weeks ago I heard your wife joke about counting down to my death." But I didn't. I just hugged him back and drove home and added another page to the documentation Harrison was building. The second time was worse. Stephanie called and asked if I could watch their house for the weekend while they went to a bed and breakfast in the Berkshires. "It's our anniversary," she explained, "and we really need this getaway. You know how stressful life has been." I said yes because I always said yes. I watered their plants and brought in their mail and sat in their beautiful living room that I'd helped them afford. And I thought about Inheritance Day. I thought about it a lot. And then I went home and signed more papers in Harrison's office. The competency evaluation was easier than I'd expected. Dr. Patricia Rollins was a psychiatrist who specialized in elder care, and she spent 2 hours asking me questions, having me complete memory tests and assessing my decision-making capacity. At the end, she smiled and said, "Mrs. Mitchell, you're sharper than most people half your age. I'll have my report to your attorney within the week." The video recording was harder. Harrison set up a camera in his office, and I sat in front of it and explained everything. Why I was creating the trust, what I'd overheard, how it made me feel. I cried during that recording, which Harrison said was actually good. It showed genuine emotion and made it clear this wasn't some cold, calculated revenge. It was a mother's broken heart making a rational decision. By mid-November, everything was complete. The trust was established, funded, and absolutely airtight, all $23 million of my estate. The house, the investments, the life insurance, everything Robert and I had built together, was now locked into a legal structure that would pay Daniel $100 per month for 40 years after my death, with the remainder going to animal shelters. Harrison walked me through the final documents, and I signed my name on page after page, feeling lighter with each signature. "It's done," Harrison said finally, closing the folder. "How do you feel?" "Free," I said. And I meant it. For the first time since Robert died, I felt like I was making my own choices instead of just trying to be useful enough to be loved. "What will you do now?" Harrison asked. "Live my life," I said simply. And that's exactly what I did. I started saying no. When Daniel called asking if I could loan him money for a new roof, I said I was tightening my budget. When Stephanie asked if I could pick up some things from Costco for them, I said I had other plans. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't cold. I just stopped being quite so available, quite so eager to please. They noticed, of course. By Christmas, Daniel was asking if I was feeling all right. "You just seem different lately, Mom. Distant." I told him I was fine, just getting more involved in my own hobbies. I'd joined a painting class at the community center. I'd started volunteering at, and yes, this was intentional, the local animal shelter. The irony wasn't lost on me. Twice a week, I spent my afternoons at Burlington County Animal Rescue, socializing cats and walking dogs and falling in love with creatures who wanted nothing from me except kindness and consistency. The staff loved me, the animals loved me, and I loved them back without fear of being used or dismissed or turned into a punchline at someone's dinner party. In February, I adopted a dog, a 7-year-old golden retriever named Bailey who'd been surrendered when her elderly owner passed away. The shelter director told me Bailey had been depressed, barely eating, mourning her lost person. "She needs someone patient," the director said, "someone who understands loss." I took Bailey home that day. And for the first time since Robert died, my cottage didn't feel empty. Bailey slept by my bed. She followed me from room to room. She didn't care about my money or my estate or when I might die. She just wanted to be near me, to rest her head on my knee while I read, to go on slow walks through the neighborhood in the evening. She wanted me, just me, exactly as I was. Daniel met Bailey in March when he stopped by unexpectedly. He seemed surprised by the dog, even more surprised by the new paintings hanging on my walls, the ones I'd done in my art class. "I didn't know you painted," he said, studying a watercolor of Lake Champlain. "There's a lot you don't know about me," I said, not unkindly. "Would you like coffee?" We sat in my living room, Bailey lying across my feet, and Daniel talked about work stress and money worries and how Stephanie was frustrated with their outdated kitchen. He didn't directly ask for help, but the implications hung in the air between us like smoke. I sipped my coffee and didn't offer. After a while, he left, confusion written across his face. The mother he knew would have already been pulling out her checkbook. If you're watching this, and you've ever been taken for granted by family, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get very interesting, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Spring turned to summer. Summer turned to fall. I lived my life. I painted. I volunteered. I took Bailey to the lake. I had lunch with friends who actually valued my company, and I didn't think about the trust very often because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. It was about choosing dignity over desperate belonging. Then, on a Tuesday in October, exactly 1 year after that dinner party, my phone rang. It was Stephanie. "Caroline? Hi. Listen, I know this is kind of random, but we're having another dinner party this weekend and we'd love for you to come. As a guest this time, not just dropping off groceries." She laughed at that like it was some kind of inside joke we shared. My hand tightened on the phone. "What's the occasion?" "Oh, just celebrating. Daniel got a promotion at work and we finally have the financial breathing room to enjoy life a little. You know how tight things have been. Anyway, Saturday at 7, please say yes. We never see you anymore." I closed my eyes. The old Caroline, the one from a year ago, would have been thrilled. Invited, included, wanted. The new Caroline knew better. But the new Caroline was also curious. "I'll be there," I said. Saturday arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully. A nice sweater, good slacks, the pearls Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary. I drove to Daniel's house with Bailey in the passenger seat. I'd told them I was bringing her. "I don't leave her alone much anymore," I'd said. And Stephanie had agreed in that overly enthusiastic way that meant she found it slightly pathetic, but was too polite to say so. The house looked the same as it had a year ago. Same warm windows, same cars in the driveway, but I was different. I wasn't sneaking in the back door with groceries anymore. I walked right up to the front entrance and rang the bell. Daniel answered with a huge smile. "Mom, and you brought Bailey. Come in, come in." He hugged me, and I hugged him back. And for a moment I felt the grief all over again. This was my son, my child, the boy I'd rocked through nightmares and cheered through soccer games and sent off to college with tears streaming down my face. How had we ended up here? The living room was full of people. Some I recognized from last year. They smiled at me. They complimented Bailey. They asked how I was doing in that way that expected a brief, pleasant response. I gave them one. I was fine. Life was good. Yes, the dog was wonderful. No, I didn't get lonely. Stephanie appeared with wine, pressed a glass into my hand, and announced that dinner would be ready soon. "Caroline, you're at the head of the table tonight. Guest of honor." She was trying, I could see that. Whatever distance I'd created over the past year had registered, and now she was compensating, trying to pull me back into their orbit. We sat down to dinner. Roasted chicken, vegetables, good bread. The conversation flowed around me. Someone told a story about a disastrous vacation. Someone else complained about their boss. And then, as dessert was being served, one of the guests, the same woman who'd laughed about Inheritance Day last year, raised her glass. "A toast," she declared, "to Daniel's promotion, to good friends, and to the future, finally looking bright." Everyone drank. Everyone smiled. And then Stephanie, emboldened by wine and good spirits, added, "And to only 3 more years until retirement. We've got it all planned out. Sell this place, buy something in Florida, and live off the investment income." Daniel shot her a look. "Steph." "What? I'm just excited." She turned to me, eyes bright. "You understand, Caroline. We've been waiting so long to actually enjoy life instead of just scraping by." "Waiting for what exactly?" I asked quietly. The table went still. Stephanie blinked at me, confused. Waiting for, financial stability, for Daniel's career to take off, for things to finally fall into place. "Financial stability," I repeated. "That's interesting, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been waiting for me to die. You could have heard a pin drop." Daniel's face went white. Stephanie's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The dinner guests suddenly found their dessert plates fascinating. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Daniel managed. "I'm talking about last October. I'm talking about the dinner party where I came to drop off groceries and heard Stephanie joking about counting down to Inheritance Day. I'm talking about how everyone in this room laughed about my death like it was the punchline to a joke." Stephanie's wine glass hit the table hard. "You were here? You heard?" She stopped, recalculating. "Caroline, that was just... We'd been drinking and I was kidding. It was a stupid joke. Was it? I looked around the table at all these people who'd laughed that night, because it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a plan, like you'd actually calculated your future based on when I might die and how much you'd inherit. Mom, please. Daniel's voice was strained. Can we talk about this privately? Why? You didn't have any problem discussing my death publicly last year. In fact, I believe Stephanie said you'd earned your inheritance by putting up with my hovering and my judgmental comments about housekeeping. I turned to my daughter-in-law. Is that still how you feel? Have you earned it? Stephanie's face had gone from white to red. I was drunk. I didn't mean... You meant every word, I said calmly. And that's okay, because you taught me something important that night. You taught me that I'd been measuring my worth by how useful I was to you, instead of measuring your character by how you treated me. So I did something about it. What did you do? Daniel asked, and I heard the fear creeping into his voice. I restructured my entire estate. Everything is now in a charitable remainder trust. After I die, you'll receive $100 per month for 40 years. The rest, all $23 million, goes to animal shelters, no-kill shelters and rescue organizations throughout New England. It's completely legal, completely irreversible, and completely documented with video testimony explaining exactly why I made this choice. The silence was deafening. Stephanie looked like she might be sick. Daniel just stared at me, his face cycling through disbelief, horror, and then anger. You can't do that, Stephanie hissed. That money is Daniel's. You and Robert built that business for him. We built it for our family, I corrected. But family doesn't joke about Inheritance Day. Family doesn't count down the years until someone dies. Family doesn't treat someone like an ATM with a pulse. So I found a better family. Animals don't care about my bank account, and they just want love and safety and someone who shows up for them. I'm giving my money to organizations that provide that. Mom, Daniel's voice cracked. Please, can we talk about this? Can we fix this? There's nothing to fix, I said, standing. Bailey stood with me, loyal and steady. This is done. I'm done. I hope that promotion works out well for you, Daniel. I hope you and Stephanie have a wonderful life in Florida, and I hope someday you understand that you didn't lose an inheritance. You lost something much more valuable. I walked out of that house with my head high and Bailey at my side, and I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear Stephanie crying and Daniel's angry voice and the awkward silence of dinner guests who'd just witnessed a family imploding. I didn't care. Let them process it. Let them sit with what they'd lost. Daniel called 17 times that night. I didn't answer. Stephanie sent a long text the next morning full of apologies and excuses and desperate promises to do better. I deleted it. They showed up at my door on Tuesday. I didn't let them in. It's done, I said through the screen door. Everything I needed to say, I said, and everything I needed to do, I've done. Now I'd like you to leave. But you're my mother, Daniel said, and he was crying. Actually crying. You can't just cut me off. I'm not cutting you off. You'll get $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. That's more than a lot of people inherit. That's not what I meant. I meant I need you. I'm your son. You needed my money, I corrected gently. There's a difference, and maybe someday you'll learn that difference. But right now, I need to live the rest of my life on my own terms, not as someone's backup plan, not as someone's retirement fund, just as Caroline, just as me. They left. They tried a few more times over the following months, but each attempt was weaker than the last. Eventually, they stopped trying. I heard through mutual friends that they'd put the house up for sale, that they were moving to New Hampshire where cost of living was cheaper. I heard that Daniel took a different job. I heard that Stephanie was angry with me, telling people I was cruel and vindictive and mentally unstable. Let her talk. Harrison had documentation proving otherwise. As for me, I'm still here, still volunteering at the shelter, still painting, still taking Bailey on long walks by the lake. I've made new friends through the animal rescue community, people who value compassion over inheritance, who measure worth in kindness instead of dollar signs. I've traveled a little, just small trips. I saw the ocean in Maine. I visited the art museums in New York City. I'm living my life for myself, finally, at 73 years old. And the animal shelters? I've visited several of them already, met with directors, seen the work they do. When my time comes, whenever that is, my money will help save thousands of animals who never asked for anything except a chance. That feels right. That feels like a legacy Robert would approve of, even if it's not the one we originally imagined. Daniel will be fine. He's smart and capable, and maybe losing that inheritance will teach him something about building his own life instead of waiting for someone else's to end. Or maybe it won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I chose dignity. I chose self-respect. I chose a family that loved me for who I was rather than what I had. And I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat. That's my story. That's how I turned Inheritance Day into Independence Day. And I'm not sorry.